Oh, who doesn't love a wedding? Doctor Who Series 11 continues on, and we have the Demons of Punjab. And this one, I honestly had no idea what to expect from this one. And as it got started, I was very nervous because immediately we're doing a go back in time to meet a relative that you didn't know because they died before you were born. And I immediately got, big clanging alarm bells of Father's Day, which, I mean, I'm on record as not liking, but then again, the main reason I don't like Father's Day are the Reapers. I really hate those things. So, there is stuff to be done with it, but at the same time, I thought, even if this does it well, it's going to be repeating something that I've already seen Doctor Who do. Do I really want to watch this? But as it went along, it was doing something different, because whereas Father's Day was about sort of getting a little bit demystified and having a sense of somebody who you've heard stories of but have never met, in the case of the Demons of Punjab, it's about understanding how much more there is to the life story of someone who you do know, but like I said, a lot more going on there. And so we've got that as our setup. There are, of course, aliens that get involved, and it's a little bit of an interesting sort of angle that comes at it from. And overall, I liked it. And I don't know what the general reaction is. Like I said, I usually tend to avoid it, but I feel like whatever negative vibe there is among the fandom, or at least some stripes of the fandom, has been building across the series. So I think potentially there's probably been a not great reaction to this. I like it quite a bit. There's a number of things I like about it, but ultimately, the main thing that I like about it has to do with the emotional connections and the journey that Yaz goes through in relation to her grandmother. And I will be flat out honest. I'm not saying this is a flawless story, but I will acknowledge, and I often do, that if you can connect something with something at the correct emotional level, it papers over a lot of faults. And I think that is frequently what can be the case with something like Father's Day, which I know connected with a lot of people much more strongly than it did me on an emotional level. So for me, in something like Father's Day, I was left in a situation where I understood what the emotional hook was, and I'm not going to say it didn't work, but it didn't work on me. And so that meant that I was left with a story that I just saw a lot of faults in. Whereas this, it did connect. The emotional bit of it did. And so while there are issues, I don't feel them as much because it made the emotional connection. And that can make all the difference. Now, I suspect if for whatever reason it didn't connect emotionally with people, that they probably won't take as much of a liking to it, because whether or not, minus the emotional stakes, it's still a good story or not, I think it's still a pretty decent story, all things told. It is at its heart an emotional story. That is the main angle it's going for. So if that doesn't connect, it's still going to leave you with what is going to feel like a bit of a half experience, because the main push of it was something that didn't work for you. But again, it did for me. And sort of the big thing for me was, I could connect and relate with Yaz and coming to a better understanding of her grandmother's life. Remind me more than a little bit of my own mother, because while my mother had never been one to omit details or sugarcoat her life, a lifetime to tell somebody accurately what your life was like would take a lifetime. So whenever you relay your story to somebody, you edit, whether it is stuff that you didn't think mattered, or stuff that you have one reason or another to not wish to share it, either with that specific person or at all. And as I've gotten older and I've had some more in-depth and longer conversations with my mother about things she's been through, and I've gotten a clearer picture of of what she's gone through in her life and what she's endured, it's, it didn't necessarily like kind of shake me, this sort of no like that Yaz goes through, but like that sort of having to reformulate and understand the person and the life behind the stories and the image you have of someone, even someone in your life, in your family who you connect strongly with, that can cause a disconnect and that can take some getting over, and she does, and I quite like that. And so as a result, that worked really well for me. I found the setting interesting. I in an odd way, it might make me appreciate Rosa a little bit more. It doesn't erase the issues that I have with that story. I might revisit some of that when I do an end of series wrap up sort of thing. But I'll tell you that as someone who doesn't know a ton about India's history, this was a chunk of it that, I mean, I got what was going on. I think they did it really well because, again, speaking as an American, this was a piece of history and a piece of the world that I didn't really know much about, really at all. So they addressed just enough about what was going on to make it clear why this was going to cause problems, and presented me with something where I'm like, oh, dang. Yeah, that would make for a really ugly situation in that part of the world. Holy cow. I really didn't fully understand that that's kind of how we got in some ways to where we are now, with certain parts of the world and the way certain things are. And I think it was decently handled. Again, I have to assume a decent level of accuracy on it because, again, I don't know. So that I have to kind of make a leap of faith on my part there. So the thing is that because it unlike Rosa, which is dealing with a known historical figure, this is dealing with a known historical situation and with invented people. And I think that gives you a little bit of leeway. But seeing the breaking of families and the split between neighbors and people who care about each other, but the divisions just get stoked, whether purposefully or not, but by the situations and by the circumstances. And there are people who take advantage of that, and there are people who lean into their own worst feelings about what's going on too hard. And again, that rang pretty true for me, and I thought that worked well. The alien element, it was interesting. It wasn't bad. I'm not sure how much it actually adds, though, at the end of the day. It's kind of a neat idea, yet it's also more than a little bit reminiscent of what was going on in Twice Upon a Time with the sort of glass beings who were retaining the memories of people from their moment of death. This whole notion of a race sort of honoring not the forgotten dead necessarily, but the people who died alone, and witnessing them so that someone's there. It's kind of an interesting idea, but it did remind me more than a little of that, and I think that bothers me a little bit more than the general setup feeling like Father's Day, because it's, for God's sakes, it's been 13 years since Father's Day. I figure that's fair game to revisit that general premise again. Twice Upon a Time was less than a year ago, so that element feels a little bit more repetitive in terms of stuff that's gone on recently with the show. But again, in and of itself, it worked and was kind of decent. If I had a complaint, it's one that I might not have about the episode in isolation, but it's a vibe I'm getting in general about the show, and this kind of feeds into it, which is that I feel like Whitaker's doctor is, passive's the wrong word, but she feels much more separate and apart from events than I'm used to the Doctor being. I don't know if that's an upshot of how much how much is only the second one, but I mean, dealing with real world history, it can get dicey. That's part of it. But even like beyond that, even the other episodes that that I've enjoyed, or even some of the ones I haven't, she feels very much either more of an observer or just kind of along for the ride. I don't get the sense of her taking control of the situation. And I mean, that's not to say that I need her to demand that everyone listen to her. It's, I don't know. It's it just seems a little less, oh, let's get stuck in, than I'm used to. I need to think on that a little bit more, because I mean, she's getting into the situations, but again, there's just passivity's too strong a word, but I can't think of a gentler one that is in the same vein, and that's throwing me off a little. Again, if I restrict it to any specific episode, it's fine, but it's the pattern of it that I feel like I'm seeing that's throwing me off a little bit. And there's the scene that Yaz has with Graham, which is a great scene, with Graham kind of opening her eyes up about, what I've kind of talked about. This woman you're meeting now, she's not your Nan yet. She's not that person. She'll become that person, but she isn't now. And she wasn't going to tell you absolutely everything that ever happened to her. You need to remember that she was a person, and a different person from long before you were even born, much less got to know her. And it was a good scene, but I felt like the Doctor should really be having this conversation. Because in more than a few ways, it reminded me of the second Doctor talking with Victoria in Tombs of the Cybermen, which is one of my favorite second Doctor scenes ever. One of my favorite Doctor Who scenes, to be completely blunt about it. And that scene in this episode, between Graham and Yaz, it was good. It was still good, and I liked it, and I'm liking Graham a lot, but I'm just left thinking, I wish that was the Doctor talking to her in this scene. And I think that maybe that's part of the passivity sense. I feel like she's not making the connections with the companions as much. And part of that might be because of how many of them there are. I get that she wants a strong connection with them, but I don't feel like it's being built. I feel like I'm watching the connections between the companions get stronger, but I'm not seeing the bond between the Doctor and the companions get stronger. And again, that's more sort of a ramble of where the series is as a whole. I don't really want to level that against this episode specifically because, again, in isolation, I actually quite like this episode. And I was surprised. I was really skeptical going into this. Once I latched onto the premise and I got what was going on, I was prepared to just groan my way through this. But it connected and it worked for me, and I was surprised how well. But I am noticing things in it that are things that I'm noticing in other episodes that are creating sort of larger scale things. So I guess I'll wrap it up there. I like the episode. I like it a lot. But I'm starting to get a firmer grip on some of the larger scale things going on in the series overall that aren't quite working for me. Those ideas are solidifying in my head at the same time that I'm seeing an episode that I actually rather enjoy. So there you go. There's that bit of weirdness for you. So, Demons of Punjab, what did you think about it? Whatever your thoughts were, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Please be respectful. I am actually getting a little bit irritated at how many people that I am having to block and ban off the channel out of the comment sections for personal attacks. Just remember, if you do a personal attack against another commenter, against me, against the people involved in the show, I'm going to remove it, and there's a decent chance I'm just going to block you. And also, let's be clear, I don't have the time or the patience to sort through the ones being done for real and the ones being done as a joke anymore. And if I delete your comment, but you meant it as a joke, tough. Just don't be a jerk. Okay? So, assuming you can abide by that. Sorry, that got a little bit more than I meant it to, but assuming that you can, and again, you can be as critical as you want, just don't be mean to people and don't be rude. So keep your thoughts polite and drop them down in the comments. Let's talk about it. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do there as well, because there's buttons and there's links, including links to my Patreon if you feel like supporting the show that way. Even if you don't, there's other links for you to check out. And besides that, you know what? End of the day, you don't even have to worry about it because you're the council and I just run the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned.